Hello everyone, my name is Mindy and welcome back to Oh My Growth. In today's image, you can see a very beautiful little shadow in the upper corner from my plant. Please ignore that. I'm still trying to figure out where to record this in the best way, but I think I've settled on having a white wall behind me. I feel like it just looks a little bit more clean and you can see me better, and that's wonderful, I guess. Today I'm here to talk about boundaries. And boundaries is something I personally have struggled setting in my life in a good and healthy way. I would say that the majority of my life I've been a people pleaser. And I think a lot of people who know me would probably say the same. Not to try to be too hard on myself or mean to myself, but it's true. I have had tendencies of people pleasing in my past, and that's just something I'm gonna own. I've definitely gotten better at it, but it's been an upward battle in order to start maintaining boundaries and setting them, but also understanding more about boundaries and why they are important. And even if your goal is to impress other people or please other people, setting boundaries is super necessary for doing that too. I've always thought it was better to say what people wanted to hear, and if there was conflict, I would see it as a better way out, kind of to just agree with what other people were saying. And of course, that works, but does it make me feel good? No. Is it healthy? Absolutely not. Does anyone else in my surroundings learn from that or grow from that? No, they don't. Because if I'm just people pleasing, then I'm not stating my opinion. And sometimes my opinion might be right. Sometimes their opinion might be right. But that's the way we learn. We learn through setting boundaries. We learn through talking to people. We learn through making mistakes. And all of that can only be done if people speak their own truth and stick up for who they are. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And at the end of the day, let's say that your main goal is to make other people like you. Let's say that's your goal. Honestly, a lot of us probably have that as a goal subconsciously, because a lot of the things we do as human beings is to impress other people or connect with other people to an extent. But let's just say, hypothetically, my goal is to make people like me, okay? If you are someone who consistently always agrees with what everyone else is saying, that is not going to make people like you, because that is not going to make people respect you. People will see you as a, well, opinionless person, and that is not good for you or anyone else. There needs to be a space where you are your true self. There needs to be a space where you're respecting yourself at the core, because if you respect yourself, it is way more likely that other people in your surroundings are going to respect you too. And that is one of the first points I want to make. If you respect yourself, other people are way more likely to respect you as well. First, we're going to talk about what boundaries actually are. What are boundaries? I've split this up into three categories, kind of. There's emotional boundaries, there's physical boundaries, and then there are mental limit boundaries. And all of these three different types of boundaries can be found in different settings as well. They can be personal, they can be professional, and they can be regarding relations in your life. Those three types of settings occur in everyone's lives in one way or another, and different boundaries take place in different spaces. The first boundaries are emotional boundaries. So when I say emotional boundaries, I basically mean the boundaries you set to protect your feelings, the boundaries you set for your emotional well-being, the boundaries you set to say no to any emotional labor, and the boundaries you set when you're wanting to distance yourself from toxic people who don't make you feel happy. When we talk about physical boundaries, we're talking about personal space, we're talking about physical touch, which can be a pretty sensitive topic sometimes, and we're also talking about just privacy in general, because we all need a sense of privacy in our lives, and that has to do with our physical environment. The last one, mental boundaries, are more about boundaries towards your thoughts, your beliefs, your opinions, and your ideas so that they're respected and not invalidated. There is a overlap between emotional and mental boundaries, but just differentiating them into categories for now a little bit to make them a little bit easier for us to maybe process and go through. All of these occur in different settings in our lives. I can only speak from my own personal experience, but I would say that, for example, mental boundaries is something I've really had to practice when it comes to workspaces and professional settings. I don't want to be that person, but as a woman in workspaces, it can sometimes be a little bit hard, especially if you're working in a male dominated field. And for a long time, I was working in technology. And in technology, it is a male dominated field in many ways for now. And that is something that I definitely did notice in interactions sometimes, not necessarily from colleagues and such, because I had wonderful colleagues, but more about what positions were idealized for a girl and what were more idealized for men. And this is a conversation that I've had with people from the same company, and it's not something that they maybe picked up on, but it is something I had pretty extensive conversations with other female colleagues of mine about, and it is really sad that that's true. But this is the type of situation where it's a great company, very inclusive in all kind of ways, and still that does happen a little bit behind the scenes, and that is very, very common. So that is, for example, a space where mental boundaries do need to put in place. My ideas, my opinions, my beliefs, my thoughts, like that is something that I should have a boundary towards, where they need to be respected and not invalidated. When it comes to emotional and physical boundaries, in my personal life and from things that conversations I've had with friends and classmates and so forth, the emotional and physical boundaries take place a lot in relationships, but also in our personal lives and with our personal relationship with ourselves. Our personal relationship with ourselves is all about maintaining self-respect and maintaining personal peace and making sure you have some alone time sometimes as well to dwell on things or journal or whatever you need to do to work through your thoughts and your feelings in a good way for you. And this is where some physical boundaries, for example, could come in place, where you need some privacy. I do believe that every human needs some sort of privacy in order to feel good and well balanced, and having personal space is important. But that goes to say in relations as well. Not only relationships, by the way, it could even be with family, it could be with friends, especially if you are living with other people, roommates as well. A lot of physical boundaries could come into play when it comes to roommates and the relationships you have with your roommates. There is an interplay between emotional, physical, and mental boundaries, as well as your personal space, professional life, and relations that you have with other people. Just placing it into small categories like that can sometimes help me, at least, reflect if I'm feeling overwhelmed or overstimulated. I sometimes sit down and I think, okay, so what boundary do I think I'm not really respecting at this moment in time? Okay, that's the one that I think I need a little bit more of right now. And where is it taking place? Is it in my personal life? Am I not maintaining my self-respect? Am I not maintaining my personal space? Or does it have to do with my job or school? Is there something there that's feeling off? Or is this relational? As in my interactions in my relationships, or maybe even the boundary between helping other people and choosing yourself. And this brings me into the second part that I wanted to go through, which is why you need boundaries in the first place. Boundaries protect your mental health. Boundaries also prevent burnout, and they prevent resentment towards yourself and other people, for that matter. Boundaries also foster healthier relationships, and that is something that is really important to acknowledge as well. If you're always saying yes, if you're always feeling drained, if you're always feeling guilty or anxiety when you put yourself first, if you find it really hard to express your needs, that is going to affect not only your mental health, not only your own burnout and your own personal relationship with yourself, but it's definitely also going to affect the relationships you have with other people. You need boundaries. You need to know what your boundaries are. And you also need to know what other people's boundaries are in order to adhere to them too. The difficult thing with this is that it's only something you can do for yourself. No one's going to do it for you. I feel like I've been a people pleaser for, well, okay, I can't say 23 years because I was a baby, in fact, for a while, but I think I've been a people pleaser ever since I was like 9 or 10, honestly, because from an early age I kind of saw life, I don't know, I saw it in a different way, and my main goal was just to make other people happy all the time. And sure, that can be really nice in some situations, putting other people first, or just wanting the best for other people. But at the same time, when that went too far, it started developing into me instead wanting to please other people so bad that it backfired, and my relationships with people got worse because I didn't stick up for myself. I didn't have any opinions. I didn't respect myself in different scenarios. And the problem is that if you don't respect yourself and something happens and you don't say that it sucked or it hurt, the person who did that is probably going to do it again, not because they intentionally want to hurt you, but because you haven't set a boundary. And if you don't set a boundary, then they're not even going to know that they did something wrong. And yes, we can argue, should we really have to tell people how to treat us? Like, shouldn't they just know how to treat us? The answer is no. They're not going to know how to treat you if you don't tell them how you want to be treated. That is just the reality of things, and it sucks that it's that way, but it's true. If you don't take responsibility and you don't say what you expect of people, you can't expect to get it. And it's not easy. It's really hard, in fact, to start setting boundaries if you're someone who is used to wanting to put other people before yourself. This behavior that you have is not something that's come out of nowhere. There are situations in life where you're growing up in different environments where maybe you had to be that person for a while for someone. Maybe you had to support your family. I don't know. Like, everyone comes from different backgrounds, and you can definitely be experiencing just backlash from that. And I think the hardest lesson with that is learning that since that's in your power, at the end of the day, if you are in that scenario where you're letting people walk all over you every day, all the time, the only person you can actually blame is yourself, unfortunately. And I don't mean to sound rude when I say that. It's just that it's true. If you are not setting boundaries for yourself, if you're not communicating that kind of stuff, you can't expect to be getting it. It is in your power. This is something you need to communicate and you need to put forth. And if you do that and people disrespect you, you need to learn to walk away from unhealthy situations and relationships. Remember that this is affecting the relationship with yourself. Why would we let anyone affect the relationship we have with ourselves? That is the most precious relationship you are ever going to take care of, ever going to put energy into. This is something you need to start doing if you're not already doing it. How do we start setting boundaries if we're not used to setting boundaries? Number one is self-awareness. Being aware, and I say this so many times, but self-awareness is literally step one to any growth, any change you want to see in your life. Identify your limits, identify your boundaries, identify how you want to be treated, both emotionally, mentally, and physically, from yourself and from other people in all kind of scenarios, both professional, relational, and personal. Sit down, write it down, think about it really hard, and truly be ready to start implementing those boundaries. Number two is clear communication. You cannot expect other people to treat you differently if you're not clear. And here, of course, it's important to still be kind. Like, not everyone out there are bad people, but being direct, but being kind. Be direct and be kind. That's a good way of putting it. Direct communication, be nice about it, and hopefully people will respect you. And number 3 is practicing and just starting small. Let's take the example of, for example, a friend of yours calling you late at night often to vent and talk about their feelings and that it's affecting your sleep. Okay? First, acknowledge your need here. You need to realize that you need rest to function. You need rest to be a good friend. You need rest in general. So number 2 is communicating that clearly to this friend of yours. And you could say something like, hey, I care about you. I want to be there for you, but I've been feeling really drained. When I get late night calls, I need to prioritize my sleep. Could we please talk earlier in the day instead? You're firm, you're kind, but you're still communicating your need to your friend. Does that make sense? Let's do another example. Let's take an example from work. Let's say you have a coworker who, I don't know, interrupts you all the time and has non-work related questions or whatever, and it's just like keeping you from being productive at work. So number 1 here is acknowledging the need. The need is that you need some personal space in order to complete your work and you need uninterrupted time. So now we communicate it clearly. We could say something like, hey, I've noticed that when I'm working on something, it's hard for me to switch between tasks quickly. Would it be okay if we set a time aside to discuss this more non-urgent question instead of during my work hours? That might not have been perfect, but it was still firm, it was still kind, and it also provided a solution, saying, hey, we could talk about this during lunch or something. There are many ways of communicating boundaries without being rude. Like, boundaries are not rude. You can make them super kind, and you can offer new solutions, but still identifying your needs as a human being and communicating them clearly from the start. So you set the standard high to begin with. This is harder to do if you have a very close relationship with the person, especially because that person is already going to have a mental image of what they expect of you and what they expect your relationship to look like. So you need to expect backlash. There is going to be backlash. There are going to be questions asked. Honestly, some people might even be like, why would you say that? That's so rude. Like, you usually always help me or something like that. But if someone reacts that way and really gives you backlash for you setting a boundary, that's not a very good friend to begin with, or a good partner to begin with either. And in those scenarios, you have to stay firm. You have to reaffirm your needs. You have to expect the resistance, but still stand your ground and make sure you get what you need. This is self-care. This is prioritizing your well-being. This is something you should be doing your entire life because, once again, the relationship you have with yourself is going to be the most important relationship you ever build. And people who aren't there to support you might not be good people for you to have around anyway. Honestly, it can be really eye-opening to start setting boundaries and seeing who sticks around and who starts disappearing or giving you a hard time about it. That's how you weed out the people who aren't there for you. And better late than never. This is a shorter episode, but I feel like it's a very important focus episode to do. So first of all, just to make it a bit easier for you to process your own emotions here, we have 3 types of boundaries. We have emotional boundaries, we have physical boundaries, we have mental boundaries. These boundaries can be found in different scenarios, but just for the sake of making it simpler, we have personal situations, we have professional situations, then we also have relational situations. Why do we need boundaries? We need them to protect our mental health, we need them to prevent burnout, prevent resentment, and we need them for healthier relationships, both with other people, but also ourselves. How do we set boundaries? We set boundaries by having self-awareness and identifying our limits or identifying what we need, by clearly communicating that to the other person involved, and by starting small and practicing. And remember, you will have to deal with pushback, but that's just part of it. And honestly, if you're experiencing pushback, it just means you're doing it the correct way and making change happen. That's all I wanted to go through today. I hope you have a beautiful and wonderful morning, evening, day, or night, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in.